Hi, everyone. Welcome to our Lunch and Learn webinar today. My name is Kim Bussey. I'm the Key Relationship Manager here with Omnia. And today, for the next hour, we're going to be talking about leadership versus management, the differences, and how to be good at both. A couple of housekeeping things before we get started. At the top of your screen, there is an icon of a person with their hand raised. At any time, if you agree or disagree with me, you need me to speak a little louder or speak a little softer, you want me to speed up or slow down, you can let me know by clicking any of those icons. Also, laughter and applause is always appreciated. You can hear me, but I cannot hear you. So if I say something that makes you chuckle, let me know. And also, if you have any questions at all, please feel free to type them into our chat box where you can share questions and comments. We will have a Q&A at the end of our session, but as well, don't hold your questions. Let them, just let me know what they are and we'll answer as we go. At the top, before we begin, I always like to tell a couple of things. One, Matt, this presentation will be available for download at the end of our webinar. So if you're looking at something thinking, I need to write that down, it's okay. You can download it at the end, as well as a couple of other tools that we offer you. And this month, if you are a regular for our webinars, but this month we have a surprise at the end. So make sure you stick around. This is going to be interactive, and if you don't follow us on LinkedIn, Twitter, or Facebook, make sure that you do that. All of our videos and webinars are available as well on our YouTube channel. So this is being recorded. It will be available for viewing in about a week on our YouTube video channel. So you can definitely take a look at that. So let's go ahead and jump right into it. And I want to start by sharing some very frightening statistics. At least they were frightening to me. So 60% of new managers fail within the first 24 months. 47% of new supervisors say that they've received no supervisor training at all. And less than 10% of managers and supervisors were prepared for a leadership role before or after being promoted. And only, about approximately 65% of managers learned leadership by guessing how to lead people. And that's a frightening statistic. If we go back to our poll that we asked in our lobby of what's the difference between a great manager and a great leader, for a while there it was overwhelmingly, yes, there is a difference. Understand it. Don't know what it is. And even now, 50% to 40, 43.7, let's just round it up to 44 because that's the type of leader I am. That's a almost even split of yes, there is a difference, but we don't know what it is. And that is what today is going to be about. Talking about really defining what those managers are and what a true leader is, giving you some tips and tools on how to do both well, because it's not necessarily an either or thing. But when we think about it as leaders, we want to help people get to the next stage. And as we're looking at this, if you've been in leadership at any point for a long amount of time, you're probably thinking, you know what, this was me. I remember my first management job. I was 19 years old, and I was the junior third key assistant store manager. I can't even remember the title. Basically, it was a glorified key holder, and I was able to be in the store by myself. For a 19-year-old, I will admit, I may have slightly power tripped on having authority, but I wasn't taught any differently. Luckily, I had a really good manager and leader who guided me on what to do. But so many times, if we think about our personal role and roadmap to leadership, did we have that? And the statistics shows that it happens more often than not that there is a failure to really teach someone how to lead. And if we're failing to teach someone how to be a great leader, then how are they supposed to know how to do it? Some of those traits come very naturally, but sometimes it's our greatest strength, could become our greatest challenge as well. So we have to take a step back and say, okay, one, I'm going to really focus today on this webinar and use it as a time of self reflection. What am I doing well as a manager? What am I doing well as a leader? And what are my opportunities for self improvement? Because if you're here just listening to this webinar thinking, oh, it's going to be easy, it is going to be easy to listen to it. But one of the biggest differences between a manager and a leader is that a leader begins to implement what they are learning through their growth. So when you think about it, it's difficult to balance responsibilities of a role. As a manager, first I have to understand what is the difference between a manager and a leader. It's confusing. I thought they were the same. We've got the same pay. We've got the same responsibilities. A manager is expected to motivate and to sell, whether they have their own goals. They've got a strategic plan. But, come to think about it, I'm not actually creating the strategic plan, but I'm implementing it. And I've got lots of goals, but doesn't a manager and a leader lead by example? They do, but what happens is sometimes what we're learning from a manager is what they do. It's very task focused. What we're learning from a leader is a little bit more of those soft skills. But both are expected to motivate their team. They have to handle conflict. Sometimes there is that hiring and firing. They've got to look at metrics and succession planning. So, with all of this, on top of everything else, what in the world am I supposed to do? Well, first, let's start off with really defining what a manager is versus a leader for the purpose of this webinar. So we're going to define a manager as a person responsible for controlling or administering all or part of a company or a similar organization. A leader, on the other hand, is defined as the person who leads or commands a group, organization, or country. So when you think about it, the manager is controlling or administering those roles and responsibilities. But a leader is a person who actually leads or commands a group. Is a difference between saying, here are the tasks and here's how I want you to implement it, and here's what I want you to do to move forward. So I want you to think for a moment. We've got a poll. Remember, I said that this was going to be interactive. So I want you to take a moment. I want you to think of the best manager you ever had. Do not write down their name. But in that upper left-hand box, give us some of those traits that made them the best manager. Were they encouraging? Were they factual? Did they tell you what you did wrong and give you feedback? But go ahead and type in what made them the best manager. And I see people typing all over the place. So I see some communication, supportive even when mistakes were made. That's great. They had faith in me. A lot of times as managers, all we can think about is, oh, I have messed this and this and this up. But now we have someone who has that faith that says you're going to get it. Honest feedback. They lead by example. Team player, supportive, empathy, encouragement, personable, feedback again, motivating. Love that they cared about me. They supported me personally and professionally. I love that. Made me present possible solutions when I had a problem. So that manager made you think instead of just giving you the answer. They're strict, but everyone had all the same roles. No favorites, fair. They were approachable, good communicator. These are great attributes of a good manager and a good leader. But let's flip the scale a little bit. And in that lower right-hand box, let's think of the worst manager you ever had. Once again, definitely do not give me names, but what made them the worst manager? Did they have favorites? Were they that person who, I see them coming, and it's usually a lot easier to think of those things. No direction. They were a micromanager, controlling. You'll do it my way, and that's it. Lazy. Ah, treated me as if I didn't have anything to offer. Told what to do and how to do it. That's a great um, def- definition of that manager, right? Like, this is what you need to do. Okay, so I'm seeing things. Wow, they're coming fast and furious. So keep typing. So unqualified, micromanagers, unpredictable, unapproachable, no direction, critical, unapproaching, controlling, treated employees very poorly, inconsistency in expectations, micromanager again only spoke to you when they thought something was wrong. And I want to put a pin on that one and circle back to that because sometimes that plays into how we communicate and how are we going to adapt to that. Let staff get away with things. Come in early, talk, had favorite, took long lunches, left early, doors always shut, didn't care. Ooh, that is awful when everyone else in the environment, in the office or department can see where things are going um, wrong, but the manager isn't doing anything about it. Emotional, offered no guidance. Ow, oh my goodness. Okay, so we got a couple more. We'll talk about a couple more. All of these, when you think about this, you're like, I'm never going to do that, right? How many of you, as they saw their manager do this, whether it was take credit for the staff's hard work or let people get away, said, if I'm a manager, I'm never going to do that. Go ahead, raise your hands. Let me see that. No one else can see your hands. I will tell you that I've done that. And I think that's the critical thing for us to realize is that as managers and as leaders, we are constantly teaching our team something. We're either teaching them something that they say, I want to emulate and put that into my toolbox, or we're teaching them that, nope, not going to do it, never want to try it. So when you're thinking about these things, I want to give you some quick tools on what a manager versus a leader looks like. So a manager requires a title. Many times they tell, do what I say. I'm not going to teach you. I just need you to do this. They instruct their people. They have objectives. And a lot of times managers focus on those hard skills and processes and goals. However, when we look at the true traits of a leader, a title is optional. And what I mean by that is that when you're a leader, you begin to practice those leadership skills long before you actually have a title. Think about some people on your team. There are those go-to people who that they don't want to be a manager. They don't, and if you ask them, do you want to move up? They'll tell you no. I like where I am. I don't want to move forward. However, they are that natural leader. Someone is drawn to them. They have a new employee has a question. They're going to go to Susie on your team because they know what is happening. There's this great book out called How to Lead When You're Not in Charge. It's by Clay Scroggins. And there's a quote in here that I absolutely love. The whole book is amazing, but it says, one, if you want to be a leader, begin today. Begin by leading yourself. And that ties right back into the title as optional. We know what our greatest strengths and our greatest challenges are most of the time, whether it's how we communicate, the fact that we don't like details, or we expect everyone to just do it right the first time and the right way is my way. As a leader, that starts well before we get promoted into a management role. It starts with what can I do? How can I quietly lead and encourage and exert my influence over others? Another quote from the book says, great leaders know how to lead when they're in charge because they've been leading long before they were ever given that authority. So a true leader understands that your leadership is not based on a position and based on a title. Other people may eventually add a title to that, but at that beginning, it's this is who we are. This is where we need to go. And a leader sells. Let's do this together. So I'm going to impart my knowledge. I'm going to teach you what I know. I'm going to very unselfishly share what I know because I'm not viewing other people as a threat to my position, to my role in the company. And I look at it as how can I encourage other people to grow. For me as a leader, one of the first things I learned and one of my greatest compliments and achievements as a leader is when someone who I am managing becomes a leader themselves, gets promoted, because I've given them the traits, I've given them the hard skills, I've given them the opportunity to lead. giving them a safe environment to fail, and then offer them the encouragement to move forward. That are all signs of a leader. And I won't say that I'm the best leader either, ever, but I'm constantly growing. Um, and that's a leader as well, has vision. They have vision for their own self development, they have vision for the department, for the company. And then many times the leader focuses on the soft skills and next steps and people versus the hard skills and the processes and goals. And many times you'll find that, okay, so some of this is overlapping. So I would say the biggest difference is the manager is what you start off with. It's when you begin to ask yourself, where do I want to go? What do I need to do? Some of those questions, what are my strengths? What are my challenges? What are my goals? And then how do I get there? You know, do I engage others? Do I give feedback? Am I looking to duplicate myself? As a manager, as you begin to ask these questions, then you begin to develop those leadership skills. So your management versus leadership is taking management to the next level. It's not depending on a title, it's not depending on responsibilities. It's saying, where do I want to go and how do I get there? And how do I lead others to that place? One of the ways is being self aware, knowing what your strengths and your challenges are. So they always say that leadership development starts with who? The leader. If you want to grow your team, if you want to develop other leaders, you need to know who you are. It's critical as we learn the difference between managers and leaders. We have to know what our strengths and challenges are. And a leader is constantly growing. And we'll talk about some of those resources that are available to you. Maybe it's something like, okay, I'm not quite sure what my natural behaviors are, what my strengths or challenges are in a perfect world, which I'd love to say we live in, or that stressful world, which is typically where I live. So, what are they? Having a behavioral assessment such as Omnia that we offer will help you say, okay, this is why I only come around when there's a problem. Oh, this is why people say I'm hard to follow. Then you've got to be aware of others. So, as a leader, we're constantly growing, but we're also looking at how can we help those other people, whether they're peers or other direct reports, how do I help them grow? And then as you learn, you adapt and apply. One of the sayings that if you've attended any of our webinars, you have probably heard me say this in the past, is that we grow one or two ways every single day. We either grow better in our skills or we grow a little worse. We lose some of the traits. If you've ever been an athlete or a musician and you haven't practiced or decide to take the off season off and not keep up with your physical conditioning, when you come back to pick up the instrument, you may still have the knowledge, but it doesn't come as naturally. Okay, what keys do my hands need to be on when I'm playing the piano? I've lost some of my speed and my tempo. Same thing as an athlete. If you don't work out in the off season, and now it's start of the season, and you go to run 3 miles, and you haven't done that in 4 months, guess who's going to be a little bit tired? You are. You're going to hear, and eventually that stamina will come back, but you've lost it. It's the same as a leader. So we've got to be aware of each of ourselves. We've got to be aware of others. And then every single day, we've got to adapt and apply what we've learned about ourselves and about those that we work with and begin to apply it. As you do that, you're going to be able to see yourself begin to transition from that management role to a true leader, that person who is constantly looking to go above and beyond. But let's talk about some of those challenges as you're trying to transition from a manager to a leadership role. So the first challenge that we see is a lot of times is positional leadership. Think of positional leadership as that first step. I'm a leader because of my title. That's when you first get promoted. And that's what we focus on. And in his book, The 5 Levels of Leadership, John Maxwell discusses positional leadership. he talks about how this is definitely the first stage of it is all about us. It is about what do I need to know? What do I need to? I'm learning a brand new job. So sometimes that focus isn't necessarily an ego thing, like I was promoted, so I must be the best. It is more of the, okay, I thought this role was selling, and I just was able to redirect some of the other sales managers. But wait a minute, you want me to pull reports? And now I've got to do coaching? Well, I just worked with this person. How do I coach this? How am I going to talk to someone who's been, my buddy for the past 5 years, and now I've got to tell them you're not doing your job right? And so during this first challenge, especially for new managers, we focus on ourselves. The problem is that we either will get stuck in this and we have that I have the title, so you're going to do what I tell you to do, or we get overwhelmed. And it goes back to that statistic that we see where 60% of new managers fail within the first 24 months. I can't do this. And so, you know what? I'm going to just quit. Some ways to overcome this and help with the beginning transitioning into more of a leadership role is one, remember that people follow people, not titles. And it doesn't happen right away. You may stay in this positional leadership phase for 3, 4, 6, 12 months, and that's okay as long as you're making gradual growth to move past it. And how you do that is by knowing your team's strengths. What are their strengths? What are their challenges? If you have someone who you say, you know what, this person is really great at reports and it's not something I necessarily have to do. So I'm going to delegate it. It's going to give them an idea of what they need to do to move forward and also help us. And check your ego. So many times we stop at this level and say, I'm a manager because it's comfortable. It's easy. I've got the title. Check. You're going to do what I say because I got the title. Check. I'm kind of coaching other people and my team feel know that I care about them, but they're not really growing because I like my team the way it is. And if I help Kim grow in her skills, then she may be promoted. And then that's going to affect my team. And I don't want it to affect my team. So therefore, I'm not going to teach her. I'll give her a little bit, but I want to keep it all in the family, so to speak. That is management thinking. You have to look at this, and as a leader, you put your people before your own roles. Now, sometimes you may have to say, as that leader, you know what? You're not always going to like me. And I'm okay with that because I'm going to push you outside of your comfort zone. I'm going to help you grow. I'm going to hold you accountable. And as you do that, then you're going to be able to move past that positional leadership. But the critical thing is that you can't just tell the direct report what you're doing. You have to create a position of trust. And Gandhi says if you have no character to lose, people will have no faith in you. So, as a manager, we can't depend on that title. We have to begin to say, okay, I need to build trust and credibility. So, instead of me versus we, manager versus leader, I'm going to look at it and say, what can I do to build my trust? A lot of times you've got to cast that vision. As you cast a compelling vision and recast it and cast it again to the point where people are tired of hearing it is when they begin to get it. And as a leader, when you want to say what you mean and mean what you say. It's no longer about I'm going to tell you what to do or do what I tell you and not what you see me doing. Okay, you have to work 8:30 to 5:30, but I come in and I work 9 to 4. You're undermining your credibility as a leader and they're putting you directly into a role as a manager. If you overpromise and underdeliver, you are diluting that trust that someone has in you. So if you say, I'm going to call you and we're going to have a discussion at noon, or I'm going to call you tomorrow, call them tomorrow. It is critical. If you want to transition from a manager to a great manager, and from a great manager to a leader and a great leader, you have to have this trust and credibility. Because as you begin to build this trust and credibility, your team is going to be able to begin to follow you. But what you want to ask is, how do I communicate with my team? So a lot of times in that management role, we give direction. I need you to do X, Y, and Z, and we are only focusing on the task. In addition, sometimes those managers don't want to give up certain tasks, whether it's because you like to do it or you just don't trust anyone else. But you can't have that closed fist when it comes to certain tasks, especially if it's not part of your regular job responsibility. And a lot of times when it comes to that trust and credibility, the manager's just going to tell you what to do. This is what I need you to do. Don't ask me the why behind the what, just do it. Whereas the leader is going to tell the why behind the what. Let me help you grow. You're going to share your knowledge. So instead of focusing just do X, Y, and Z, here's what I know about this task. Here is how it's going to influence and affect us reaching our goal. A true leader focuses on tasks only they can do. So many times I was taught, don't do anything as a manager. Don't ask your people to do anything that you wouldn't do yourself. And I 100% agree with that statement. But just because I would do it myself doesn't mean I have to do it myself. If it comes to someone taking out the trash at the end of the day and someone meeting with a client and bringing in $1 million sale, who is more apt to do that? If it's something that I need to do, then that's what I need to focus on. It doesn't mean that, oh, that task is beneath me, but I'm going to teach other people how to do that task. And if they need help, I'm going to do it. So if I'm the last person out for the night and I see that the trash can needs to be emptied, instead of leaving it, I'm going to take it and take the trash out. But you want to also share your expectations and focus on your employees' strengths. As a manager, if we're focusing on the task and we're only telling people their part of the task, it's like asking them to jump in a car on a road trip where we're not telling them where they're going. I just need you to drive 10 miles north. Well, why am I driving 10 miles north? What's happening? By telling them the why behind it. I need you to drive 10 miles north. We're going to pick up Joe, then we're going to continue up to Atlanta and have a conversation with a client to close a deal. Okay, now I see the importance. I feel like now, as an employee of the managers, I'm not just a number. So I want you to ask yourself, one, how do I communicate the vision? How well do I listen and how do I give feedback? So, one of the things that when we were asking about your worst managers, that's one of the questions that we heard is that people were saying, they micromanage, they never listen, they didn't give me great feedback. Someone said, they only came around when I had, when I did something wrong. The first start of transferring from a manager to a great manager to a leader is knowing your communication style. Are you relational? Do you filter everything through people? Are you more analytical where you filter everything through the facts? You may be unknowingly demotivating some people on your team. So regardless of your communicate of your style, the art of persuasion is to convince someone to do something willingly. It's even better if they don't realize they're being persuaded. But as a manager who wants to be a great leader, you have to know how you communicate because a manager will communicate in the way that they feel most comfortable with. A leader is going to know that how I communicate affects my influence on my team. So, how do I adapt to that? So, if you're a more relational communicator, you want to give some specific feedback. Really think about who am I talking to? Does this person like to be publicly recognized? Does this person, if I'm telling great job and I'm telling everyone on my team, great job, great job, great job, does their body language kind of this? I can see them mentally rolling their eyes like she has no clue what I do. If that's the case, then you need to start giving them some job specific feedbacks. Use facts to support your decisions and understand not everyone will like the outcome of what you have to say. It's not against you personally. If you filter everything through the facts and that more analytical communicator, you may find yourself being that problem solver who only comes out of your office to say, Kim, there was a typo on paragraph 2, word 3 on page 4 of this report. Now, that could be a demotivator. In fact, a lot of times it is because I want effort. And if the only time I see you as my supervisor, as my leader, or my manager is for you to tell me what I've done wrong, guess what? That doesn't make you a leader. That makes you someone that they want to avoid. Okay, I've got to listen to them because they've got the title. But man, do I feel beat up every time I talk to them. So, if that's you, set some parameters in place so that you can have some of those one-to-one conversations. Mix in a blend of the facts, but make sure that you're also talking about did wells because you're considering those feelings and facts, especially when making big decisions. How does it influence? How is this decision going to influence the bottom line, which all decisions filter through that one fact? And then how is it going to affect the people? Because many times your people is your number one payroll expense. So knowing that and recognizing when they're making an effort, asking for their thought process, having some conversations. Maybe you do what I call the drive-by good mornings every morning, where you come in and you walk the office. Morning, good morning. How are you doing? Good morning. And then pick one or two people, and it has to be different people throughout the week to just stop by their office and say, "Hey, Carrie, how was your day? Yesterday, or you had a great sell." And I yesterday, and I just wanted to tell you congratulations. Now, what you're doing is you're beginning to engage with your team. And that communication is key. So, one, you have to engage with that person. They have to know that you believe in them. And the more that you engage with the individuals on your team, the more that you begin to really connect with them is when you begin to be able to influence them. And influence takes you from a manager to that leadership role. Because the only way that you're going to be able to influence those that are on your team, whether it's peer to peer or direct report, is by talking with them. By having two-way conversations, there's going to have to be accountability and ownership as well. But when you engage, connect, and influence, then you begin to hear feedback on how you're doing. What can you do well? And you're able to tell them the same thing. There was a TV show out, and go ahead, raise your hands if you've ever seen it. It's called Undercover Boss. Anyone ever seen Undercover Boss? Few of you. So basically, what the premise of Undercover Boss is that it would be a CEO, senior or owner of a company that would go into disguise, and they would go out to various areas of their company. And they the premise was is that they're being followed by a TV camera. They're usually down on their luck, or they're looking to start their own business, and if they do well, then with this reality TV show, then they're going to be able to receive money and start their own business. Sounds great, right? And these are companies such as, Moe's and the Hooters and Oriental Trading and all sorts, just to name a couple. There were all sorts of them. What I always found fascinating is when they first talked to the boss, it was always like, yes, I want to come in and see how the front lines are doing, and I'm looking for facts and ways that we can improve our business. I want to make sure that we're all operating under the same process, that we're cohesive, and that my standards are being, you know, adhered to. And it never failed. Every time a leader went into the stores, whether it was a store, whether it was a warehouse, they always found out ways that they could improve. And it wasn't necessarily to improve on the bottom for the bottom line for the revenue, but ways that they could improve that connection with their employees. It was a way for them to say, oh my gosh, I didn't realize that this job was so hard or that this warehouse was so hot and you have to pay for, water and drinks from the vending machine. Oh, our dress code means that you have to wear pants in a warehouse where you're loading 18, wheelers. I can understand why that would be a little bit hot. And they were always came back deeply, deeply affected by the stories of their employees. Because in that moment, in this undercover boss project, they had a moment to engage with their employees, to really talk with them. There wasn't the barrier of, oh, here comes the CEO of our company. It was, oh, this is just someone off the street who's trying to do better. Let me share my story. And they connected with them. And when they connected with them, they always, at the end of the TV program, they would come back and they go, do you know, out of disguise, and bring the people up to the home office and go, do you know who I am? And they would always share, whether it was money or vacations or rewarding their employees in some way. There was a couple of them that the reward was that they needed to do some additional training, um, but they talked with them and then they began to exert their influence. A true leader listens, and then after they've listened and connected, they begin to influence. A manager is just going to try to immediately jump to that influence and say, this is what you need to do. And so the challenge too is that you want to beware of those communication pitfalls that so many managers fall into, whether it's because they like to avoid conflict, they want to be everyone's friend, or just the way that they communicate. So a leader gives clear expectations. They have frequent progress checks. They're talking. They create an action plan with their employees, and then they discuss what those action plans are. And then they offer continuous education, whether it's continuous education for themselves or they give that employee feedback and help them have their employees constantly and consistently grow. Managers, on the other hand, may give inconsistent expectations. I'm not quite sure what we need to do, or this is what home office is telling me, this is what I'm hearing, so now I'm going to change those expectations. There is sometimes a lack of feedback. I don't know what to tell you, so I'm going to take a step back and not tell you anything because I'm not sure how to connect with you. They may say, well, my way is the only way. No, don't say that. If that's the way, no one responds well to that. They give little to no coaching, or they address issues too quickly. There's a problem here, so we need to deal with it. Or maybe you're that manager that just likes to avoid conflict completely. And so now you wait for those frustrations and they build up and they build up and they build up and they build up. And now you're communicating those frustrations unprofessionally. You've got to take a step back and say, okay, what is this frustration? How quickly do I need to address it? And am I addressing this in a positive, professional way? Doesn't mean that you can let things go, but you still have to address it. So I want you to ask yourself these questions. In addition to how you communicate, ask about how you are communicating changes. So one, are my goals realistic? A lot of times a manager will come in and they want to change everything immediately. So ask yourself, what is the purpose of the change? Because a leader is going to observe what needs to be changed and then put a plan in place that optimizes the success of the changes and achieves employee buy-in with the least amount of resistance. They ask themselves, is this the right time to introduce that change? And are my expectations causing myself or my team stress? So that comes into play when you are someone who's, I've got goals and I want to reach them yesterday. So I don't know why everyone can't follow along with me. Let's go, let's go, let's go. And you're putting undue pressure on yourself and you're putting undue pressure on your team. So regardless of your pace, you've got to say, okay, what are some of these complications? What am I experiencing? So as a manager, you could experience some of those interpersonal complications. What am I experiencing? What's stopping me introducing this change. So I want you to think of one word, and in one word, use that to describe your employees' reactions to change. Maybe the word that you're going to use is fear. So they're scared, right? I don't like change. Go ahead, and there's a box in there that you can type it in. So go ahead and type in. What do you see? Is it fear? Is it deny? I just don't want to do it. I'm denying that. So shock. So we've got fear, shock, confused. Absolutely. What are some of those other interpersonal um, employees' reactions? Anger. Well, why are we changing things? I've done it this way for the past 5 years, and now you just came in as our new manager and you think you're going to change it all. Great. Anybody else have anything else that they want to add? So we've got insubordinate. I'm just not going to do it. Closed minded, status quo, resistant, unfair. Absolutely. All of these. So when you start thinking about that, you're going, okay, as a manager, how do I deal with this? And so many times, how we want to deal with it is just to say, well, you're going to do it. We're going to fall back on our positional authority, right? This is how you're going to do it. Or maybe we begin to exert what I like to call coercive power, right? I've got the power to punish you, so, or to give you negative consequences, so you're either going to do it my way, or I'm going to transfer you to the competition. You're out of here. What we need to do is to take a step back and say, okay, why are they feeling this way? Have I given them the why? How have I expressed how this is going to help? Have I asked for that feedback? Because a lot of times, how we lead change is how we think that everyone else is going to react to change. Change is good. Woohoo. And other people are like, change is bad. And you've just told me I have to change my entire process in the middle of my busiest season. I'm not doing it. So you've got to take a step back and say, okay, what are these complications? And then as a leader, here's how we're going to overcome them. I'm going to introduce change a lot slower than I possibly have. I'm going to introduce it at the right time. And then I'm going to offer them some of that motivation. I know with some of my team who's very process oriented, if I change too quickly, there's going to be a decline in their productivity. So instead of using my coercive power of there's a punishment, so to speak, I'm going to use my expert power. And as a leader, that's going to be skills that I possess. I'm going to teach them how to overcome this process. As a leader, I'm going to encourage them and I'm going to ask for their feedback. Those organizational hurdles that you may experience as a manager, and you say, okay, yeah, I'm a manager, but I'm a middle manager. And so I can't really change anything. They just, I can tell my team, but my boss tells me I have to tell my team, and a lot of times I agree with my team, but what do? I go back to how to lead when you're not in charge. So once again, how are you going to exert your influence? And maybe that leadership is to say, I understand the hardship. So you're validating what your team is feeling, but you're not allowing them to stay there. Early in my banking career, I was transferred to a branch and I was told, um, you have 6 months. We're not sure what's going on with this branch, but it's not generating the revenue. It's not growing the deposits the way we expect it to be. So we don't know if it's the location. We don't know if it's previous management, but here's what I'm going to tell you. You have 6 months to turn it around and to show some positive growth, or we're closing the branch. That to me was an organizational hurdle. And my first question to them is, what happens to me when you close the branch in 6 months? And they said, well, you'll have a job. As a manager, I could have walked in and said, yeah, I'm going to figure it out, but I've got 6 months and I'm safe no matter what. But I didn't. I walked in every day knowing that I needed to help make this branch a success because I had 10 people's jobs in the palms of my head. I took that ownership to say, what can I do to lead them to do better? Well, one of the physical barriers, and sometimes those physical barriers are remote employees, sometimes it is just office space, sometimes it's outside. So, in this particular branch, one of the hurdles that we were facing was the construction of the highway in front of the branch, and it had been going on for months, and it made it difficult for people to get into. And then when I was talking to him, okay, what can we do? We're not hitting our numbers. What are some suggestions? Here's what I heard. Well, we don't have people coming in because of the construction. Yep, that construction, man, it's killing us. So we really can't grow anything until this construction is taken care of. That construction was going to happen for another 6 months. If I let them really focus on that physical barrier, guess what? They were all going to be without jobs in 6 months. So my response as a leader was to say, I recognize that we have a physical barrier when it comes to construction, and it's not going to go away. So what can we do to go around it to be successful? As a leader, you can acknowledge those barriers, but you can't live in those barriers. You have to say, how can I go above, around, under it to reach our goal? And how do I bring my team along with that? And it's important that when you're thinking about bringing your team along with it, that you make sure you have your team. So a lot of times, whether as a manager or a leader, we have a tendency to leave employees behind, especially if we've got a goal and we're fast paced, especially if we feel like we've written them off. They don't care. I'm not going to talk with them. So sometimes we have to stop and say, do I have everyone? Look to your left, look to your right, see how many people are truly following you. If you have someone lagging really far behind, ask yourself why. Am I not giving them enough detailed information? Have I allowed my team to ask questions? A great leader is not afraid of questions. They're not afraid to be challenged. Now, there's a fine line between insubordination and asking questions of why are we doing this? As a leader, you have to understand what that line is. And then if you feel like someone's insubordinate, how do we get them to the why? Is it something personal? Is it that they're bitter because they were up for the same position as well and they didn't get it? Now, how do you work around that? Is it because they were a peer of yours and now you're having to adjust how you're working with them? But find out why. Stop and say, why aren't they together? Delegate appropriately. So, a lot of times managers will either try to do it all themselves or they will only delegate to those people that they feel very comfortable about, that they know what they're doing. Take a step back and say, okay, am I sharing my knowledge? Am I giving guidelines? And am I trusting but verifying? So a lot of times a manager will either trust that it gets done, but they don't ever look. Or they micromanage and have you done that yet? Have you done it yet? Have you done it yet? A great leader, a leader trusts their team. They give them the tools to do the job. They trust them to do the work, but then they check up on it. And they understand that mistakes happen. As a manager, we cannot make it punitive when someone makes a mistake. We have to be able to say, okay, what have we learned from it? Is there going to be consequences for it? Absolutely. But does the consequence match what's happening and how do we grow with it? So as a manager, a lot of times we may do frequent check-ins, but it's not a check-in on the people, it's a check-in on the progress. Are you done yet? Are you done yet? Are you done yet? And accountability is punitive. You didn't do this. As a leader, we inspect what we expect. I've told you what I need you to do. I've given you the tools to do it. I've given you the training to do it. Now what are you doing? And how do I need to come alongside you? A leader creates that ownership culture. Their main job is to duplicate themselves. And what I don't mean to have a bunch of mini me's running around out there, but to share your knowledge, to share your growth, to say, where do you see yourself in 5 years? I want to help you get there. And allow their team to have a safe environment to fail. And they understand that accountability is a learning experience. Yes, there was an issue. Here's what we've learned from it. And a lot of times, if you use it as a teaching moment, What was your thought process? What is your solution to this? It allows your team to grow, to understand fully what needs to happen. And you need to use your resources. So as a leader, as a manager, a lot of times we look at progress towards the goal and not setting up a culture of ownership. As a leader, we need to create an environment where others can begin to excel. And how we do that goes right back to being self aware, using your resource. That's one of the things that we offer here at Omnia is a leadership report that's written to tell you what your strengths and challenges are and to offer an action plan, that opportunity to grow. Because regardless of what your leadership style is, we all have room to grow. We have to say, okay, what am I doing? And whether you're brand new to management or you've been a leader for years, use those resources. Whether it is something like our Omnia Leadership Report, or maybe it's podcast, articles. Do you like to read books? Here's a great quote by John Maxwell that says, "A manager says go, a leader says let's go." Unless you are growing personally as a leader, you cannot say let's go because you don't know how to be at the front of the pack, so to speak. You've got to be on that cutting edge. So use all of your resources. There's a ton of leadership information out there. Some of my favorite authors is John Maxwell, um, leadership podcast, the How to Lead When You're Not in Charge, John Gordon. Just use your resources. If you're not a reader, listen to those podcasts. If you're a reader, there's a saying out there that great leaders grow, and great leaders read. So once again, what are you doing to know your competition, to know your people, and to know what your strengths and challenges are? Remember, you've got to be self aware of who you are, you've got to be aware of others, and then you've got to adapt and apply them. And communicate your needs. So, as a manager, a lot of times we come in and we're just trying to prove ourselves. It is okay to say, I need help in this area. I'm struggling with knowing how to coach my team. I'm struggling with understanding conflict. Man, I wish I had someone who could teach me this. And whether it's you're using a mentor, or you're asking your peers, hey, how did you learn how to deal with this? I need some more information. And then hold yourself accountable. So, as a leader, this is critical. You have to be able to say, what am I doing that I could be doing differently? And a lot of times it's just asking your team, how can I lead you better? And that's a tough question because it makes us vulnerable. And that goes against a little bit about what we've been taught, right? But we have to be held accountable. And so sometimes just by asking that question, what can I do to lead you better? Well, you know, you micromanage a lot, and I just really need you to give me some room to grow. Okay, let's talk about that. So, one of the things that we offer is a leadership development plan, and this is actually downloadable at the close of our session today. And I want you to take some time to self reflect and write what are some of those strengths that you have as a leader? What are some challenges that you have? And you may say, okay, Kim, you said manager versus leader, and I am definitely in that management column. Oh, that's a great place to start. Now, how do we take you to the next level? You can be a great manager, but we want to take you to that next level of being a leader. With understanding what those challenges are, now you can begin to think about, okay, what can I do to improve on these challenges? What do I need from leadership, a mentor? And then give yourself a goal. So, goals that are not written down are only dreams. It's because and so give yourself some goals: 3 months, 6 months, 12 months. Someone I know who is steadily, constantly working on becoming a better leader, set themselves a goal of, I'm going to read um, a book a month. So my goal is to read 12 books this year. And they are not a reader. And so it's impressive how they've stayed the task, and to hear them talk about, I've learned this, and then not just read it, but implement it. So we've given you some great tools. We've talked about some things. We've given you some resources, but you've got to ask, what's in my leadership toolbox and how am I using that? So with Omnia, we have webinars such as this. We have webinars that you can go back and look, as well as some great development reports. So I know who I am, but I'm not sure how to manage some of my team. We offer some reports that will give you some insight based on those natural behavioral traits that will allow you to dive deeper. And I want to leave you with just this encouragement. One, the fact that you're on this webinar, it shows that you're looking to grow, to improve. I have been in leadership for 20 plus years. I'm not going to tell you how many pluses, but many pluses to that. And I find myself growing each and every day. And I still make mistakes, and that's okay. Mistakes are a part of growth. If we're going to tell our people that accountability is just one step of growth, then you've got to know that the mistakes that you make as a manager, growing into a leader, is part of the growth process as well. So I want to open this up for any questions. If you have any questions, you can type them into the questions and comments box. Um, we also offer the takeaways. So we have the leadership development plan that you can download, as well as a handout and a soft skills assessment. So you may say, okay, I'm not quite sure where to start off with, but take that soft skills assessment. It'll give you some ideas of where you need to grow. And I promised you a surprise. So the surprise is, if you have not taken one of our Omnia leadership reports and you are a non-Omnia client, sorry that these are for our special guest. If you're Omnia, we appreciate you. We love you. You have access to this as well. However, we are offering a free leadership report for those of you who've never had access to Omnia before. You can click on that try our new assessment, or try our assessment now under helpful links. It's in the upper left-hand box. Use that promo code WEB 1019 2017. And we will send you our free assessment. It's quick, it's easy, it takes less than 10 minutes, and we'll talk about your strengths and challenges. It's a great tool to begin to get started. Also, we offer some training courses for your team. So our next one is next Tuesday, October 24th. It's the Art of Subtle Selling and Customer Service. If you have any questions about that or like to know the pricing for that, we are offering some discounts if you have 3 or more employees attend. You can contact my wonderful friend in marketing genius here at Omnia, Carrie Bennick at kbennick@omniagroup.com. Or can't remember that, you can let me know. Oh, Carrie's great because she's put that link in there to register. So I would say one of the questions that I'm typically asked, because I'm not seeing some questions come through, so the one question I want to leave you with is, a lot of times people say, can you be a good manager and a good leader? And the answer is absolutely. Management, to me, being a manager, is that foundation. I've learned the tools I need to, I know the tasks that need to be done. I know the processes. Now, as a leader, I'm going to teach others, and I'm going to share that information with others so that they are at a place that as soon as that opportunity comes available, they can move into it. I do want to thank you very much for attending. If you do have any questions, you can definitely reach out to me. Here is my information, kbussey@omniagroup.com. Thank you for joining us. Our next webinar is November the 16th, What Behavioral Insight Can Do for You. I hope you have a great day, and we will talk to you soon. Thank you.